Hello, and welcome to the Leading Ladies of Economic Development podcast. This podcast is a safe place for female economic development professionals to share stories, insights, and challenges of the economic development industry. We hear from women leaders across the country about their careers in ED and how you can apply their experiences to your own economic development career goals. Now, it's time to talk to the leading ladies of economic development. Here's your host, Kaycee Bunch.
Good morning, Danielle. Welcome to the Leading Ladies of Economic Development podcast. So happy you could join us today.
Kaycee, this is so much fun. I'm honored.
Well, good. Look, let's go ahead and get started. Danielle, tell us more about your background, your journey through economic development, and your current role with the Albuquerque Regional Economic Alliance.
Thank you. You know, it's funny. I'm sure you talk to a lot of economic developers. Clearly you do. You have an awesome podcast with many followers. I don't know anybody who says, let me tell you about my intentional path into economic development. I always poll people on that, and it's always some type of path of adventure or accidental kind of leaping into this industry. So, you know, the story I like to tell is I was a military kid, moved all around, ended up following mom and stepdad to Arizona and finished school at ASU. I got an anthropology degree. And so I went, I'm going to be, Mrs. or Miss Indiana Jones. It's going to be awesome. I got a job in a museum, and I realized nobody in the world should trust me in a curatorial setting. I'm way too, chatty and out there. And I ended up right out of school, managing the front desk people and doing fundraising, learning how to do a little bit of marketing from the marketing department in the museum, which is when I saw more red ink on one piece of paper than I thought was possible. That's how you learn. So anyway, I was doing all of that, drove to qualify because I was young and wanted to buy a house, bought a house in a fast growth suburb of the Phoenix Metro, wanted to work closer to home. And this little city had just been incorporated a year before, the city of Maricopa. Not in Maricopa County, because that would be too easy. No, it's got the same name, but outside of the county. And I was unbelievably lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And I got hired onto that community as an assistant to the city manager. And about 3 months into the job, we're all sitting around literally a large card table in a double wide trailer. And somebody goes, well, Danielle's the newest, so she has capacity. Go help our high-powered, highfalutin economic development consultant who's putting together a strategy for the council and do whatever that woman needs. And we may talk about her more today because I don't know, in terms of women in my life, she's second probably only to my mother in being as supportive and influential and also forcing me to learn and really, pushing me forward and making me be all I can be. So we'll talk about Ioana later, I'm sure. So that's how I got into this.
I wish I could have more time with you. I bet that you have a great story. I could only imagine those conversations around the card deck table in a trailer.
Well, there was also the day that a field mouse ran across my foot, but we'll leave that for another day. They built a $10 million city hall. That community is now 90,000 people or so. I'm so proud. Yeah.
That is awesome. I love that. So, Danielle, how long have you been with Area?
I have been with Area for 4 years and change. When I accepted this role and relocated to Albuquerque, my furniture arrived on Halloween Day of 2020. So there's another fun story. It's spooky. It's a nightmare. It's all the things. But what a wonderful and amazing experience. And I'm having more fun every day here.
Good. I like that. So you're very involved, obviously, in some national roles, some state associations, one being OUEDI, the Oklahoma University Economic Development Institute.
Yeah.
And I know you're very passionate about OUEDI.
Just a little.
So tell me about some of the most impactful programs or initiatives that OUEDI offers.
Sure, sure. Well, I'd love to start with what's funny is I actually am not a graduate of OUEDI. It's just happened when I started taking my economic development coursework, and I started in economic development. I was hired with the city of Maricopa that I mentioned in 2005. So I guess I've hit my 20-year anniversary in the industry. That mentor I mentioned immediately said she's got to go to training, send her. And I did my coursework through IEDC. But throughout my whole history, meeting people through IEDC and making friends, I noticed that the people that had like the greatest bonds, like you see them and they go, oh, we've been friends for a decade. We know each other, our families know each other. I'm going, what is this weird club? It was OUEDI that really allowed these people to form these bonds and friendships. And it's really because of the way the program works. So, first of all, although I do credit OUEDI 100%, okay, maybe 80%. I mean, you got to give yourself some credit. But I took their certification, their test review course, which doesn't tell you the questions or the answers. It tells you how to study and how to really prepare for, a multi-part, very, very intense exam with a, roughly 40% first time pass rate. I credit them for their review course for me being prepared and being able to pass my certification on the first try. Very grateful. And not passing it the first time doesn't mean that you're not just as qualified and just as smart. Anyway, but so I would say the certification itself, unbelievably valuable. Many folks will say, hey, get your certification and that will lead to higher salaries. And I think some communities that do value and see certifications do directly tie salaries or job requirements to being a certified economic developer. Some don't. But I will say that what it gave me in terms of all the work that you take through for in pursuit of certification gives you a baseline understanding of all of the competencies in economic development. So to me, it means you could go into any community and have a core understanding of what they're dealing with. You understand all of the basics and you could really adapt to any environment. Yes, you may be a real estate specialist. You may be more of a marketer. You may be more of a planner by trade, but this gives you that understanding where you can really identify with any role in any community in economic development. And to me, there's no way you can place a value on that. But it really is going back to these lifelong friendships, the networking opportunities. So the way OUEDI works, if you're going to take all your coursework in person, it's 3-week-long sessions. You go for a week, you're taking multiple classes in that week period. So you are spending at minimum a full week with a cohort. And sometimes if you're taking classes with somebody, you might have a friend that you spend 3 full weeks with over the course of a couple of years, that from elsewhere in the country, someone you would never meet that is now, a trusted friend. You've sat in classes together. You've heard case studies. You've worked through these things. You've sat in conversations and listened to instructors talk about experiences in other parts of the country. So it's just such a valuable resource. Honestly, the thing that I think makes me the biggest value to me as a practitioner is the network I can tap into. I can call, and I did the other day, I can call Quentin Messer, who runs Michigan Economic Development, and this is an IEDC thing as well. I can call Quentin Messer and say, Quentin, I really want to learn about how you guys executed on XYZ. I'm watching you as a best practice. Quentin will reply to my email in 2 hours. Quentin may have 500 emails that he hasn't answered, but we have that level of, I think, mutual admiration and respect in this profession, above and beyond what I've seen in many, many others and across the country. I like to say that economic developers will typically tell you just about anything except the deal they're working on and the package they're throwing at it until it's done. So there's a little bit about huge value to OUEDI.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to also shout out to OUEDI as well. And I promise they did not pay us to say any of these things. I promise this. But Danielle, my path was similar to yours going through the certification process, is that all my courses I took through were through IEDC. The only course I took was the prep course from OUEDI. And I will 1000% agree with you. I would also contribute a lot of their support in me passing the
Mm-hmm.
exam the first time. And I want to also reiterate what you said. It's not because they gave us answers, it's not
Right.
because they gave us some confidential information. It was the fact that that course allows you to take a little bit of extra time with an expert or experts
Absolutely.
and go through each step of the test and
Yes.
have that time to answer questions. So I encourage anybody that's going through that process or interested in the taking that exam, which I hope you are, to consider taking that prep course.
Agreed.
I
Another thing OUEDI does is, they have advisors and we have mentors. So the nice part is when you're going through that week, you also, as an OUEDI participant, and I know this again, not as an OUEDI grad, but as a mentor. What's pretty cool is, especially somebody going for the first time, taking their first week of courses, you get assigned a mentor and then you're in a group with other mentees. So right there, even if you're super shy, you're going to get thrown in with a handful of other people, maybe 6 to 12 that you get to know, you learn a little more about, and you at least have a mentor that you can reach out to and say, hey, maybe your area of expertise isn't a match for me, but can you connect me with someone? So that's another really great piece. And it creates that relationship very early on in their coursework. It doesn't require going to 10 conferences and getting to know somebody. You really kind of are set up with that from the start.
Yeah, I have two friends that went through the OUEDI courses, and they say the exact same thing you do of how truly it's a partnership to help you get to whatever professional goals you want to get to. So
Yeah.
thank you, OUEDI. I promise again, this was not a paid sponsored advertisement. It's just truly a great resource for economic developers all across our country. Okay, so I know we also want to talk about IEDC, but first I want to go back and talk about this mentor that you had, right,
Yeah,
in the beginning of yours.
yeah.
So can you talk about her and maybe can you give us her name or
Oh, of course. Of
yeah?
course. Of course. And I've talked about her so much. I don't think there's any level I don't think there's any level I can really show her the gratitude. So her name is Ioana Morphesis. Pretty unbelievably strong Greek woman, as you can imagine by hearing her name. Um, and I just want to paint a picture, unbelievably strong, takes no prisoners. This is the way I describe her is she is a woman who can, tell you your baby's ugly and have you thank her. Also, just on a personal level, and this is and this is, years of friendship and mentorship. I hear from her every Christmas. We exchange cards. She's the most thoughtful and amazing woman, but also, again, one of the toughest I've ever met. She's got this unbelievably beautiful, jet black hair and, just spunk like nobody's business. But going back, Ioana, what's so amazing about her, and of course I wasn't in the industry then, but she was the leader that she's the founding president and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. And I believe it was in 1989. I looked this up at some point, and it's either correct or I've been saying the wrong year for like a decade, and I'm just going to stick with it. But on or around then. So she was the founding president and CEO for a female leader at the end of the 80s with what was going on economically to bring together a couple dozen mayors in a high growth region that was still, Greater Phoenix today is not the same as it was in 1989, far from it. For her to do that and show that level of gumption and leadership is really astounding. And I haven't even begun to hear all the stories of what I'm sure she dealt with, but pretty impressive. She is also a past chair of IEDC. I don't know the year that she was chair of IEDC, but I think, what I see in her and what I try to emulate in passing on, I went to training. So when I started in the city of Maricopa, I mentioned, they go, well, there's this highfalutin, high paid consultant and, the mayor and council don't want to be a bedroom community. So they've hired her. And of course, I'm going, oh gosh, who is this super important woman? And, just watching her direct everything was amazing. And I love to tell this one story because when I came into the city, it was, again, I don't know, a year and a half old. our city logo was a copy of the Wells Fargo stagecoach that the IT guy changed just enough to not get us sued for trademark infringement. And she said, "You've got to brand this community. This is the most critical thing you need to do. You've got to figure this out. You've got to start off strong, figure out what you want to be." And then she looks at me and goes, "All right, you're going to need to put together a presentation and a report on what branding is." And I'm sitting here indignant going, "What? This woman is getting paid so much. She doesn't want to do her own work. How rude. I can't believe it. She's making me do all these things." And I've said this in many conversations since. My idiocy and naivety at the time, I think it didn't take that long. It was probably 2 or 3 years later that I woke up one day. This is after she made me write a 20-page paper on branding before you could really search all this on the internet. Definitely there was no chat GPT. So here I am pulling together sources and presentations, and I do a slide deck that at the time I felt was cutting edge, and today, looks like a third grader did it. But I realized a couple years later, she made me do that because she knew that was the only way I was going to fundamentally learn at my core everything I needed to know about branding, that I would own it and I would present this and pitch it to the mayor and city council, and that I would be able to make it my own. And we got them to fund it for a community that size and in that growth stage. To get them to give me, I don't know, $150,000 to do this was a huge deal. And she could have easily written that paper, done a presentation, stood in front of them and strong armed them in a heartbeat to get them to do it. She made me do it and let me do it. And that was a tremendously valuable lesson, So 20 years ago, I became an early expert in branding, even though I had no experience. So that's just a bit of an example of the kind of woman and the kind of mentor she is. She also, practically designed herself out of a consulting job on purpose, because she immediately saw me and started telling them, send her to training. She needs to go to these classes. She's going to learn to do all these things. And over the course of about 4 years, she made sure that as I grew in the profession and as I learned, that they were recognizing that and that they were promoting me with the intent of scaling back her contract. Who does that? Who intentionally designs themselves out of a job or to a lesser role in an advisory role to help a young leader and a young female leader? So that's a little bit about what she's made of.
I love that. And gosh, what a awesome mentor just to stumble up on, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody gets that type of drive or that push from the people that they're around. So how lucky to get somebody like that. So in your years of that, you've obviously are very passionate about mentorship and working with other people to grow their skills and professional development in our field.
I want to jump in on the word mentorship. So that's something I've always struggled with, because, you do go to these things, and I love OUEDI's mentors because they at least give a new person into training a touch point. I have found that the people who have become the biggest mentors of mine, it's been somewhat organic, and so to me, the way I like to give back is being accessible, right? And you kind of feel that out, rather than have somebody approaching me and going, "Will you be my formal mentor?" And maybe set monthly meetings. It's been a lot more organic than that, where you meet somebody and you have a connection, and then you go, I feel like you've got some things you're struggling to sort out, or you need a little bit of guidance. And then you have those meetings. So to me, it's always been one of those things. My strongest mentors, it's grown organically. And the people that I have, I would say, supported as a mentee, it's also kind of come about in that way. So I don't know how that is for other people, but that's how it's worked for me.
So let me ask you this then. Obviously, it's important to have female mentors in our profession, just because in general that this is typically a male dominated field. Not saying that is not evolving in 2025 and beyond, but that still exists. What advice would you give to other female leaders in economic development in a traditionally male dominated field? How do we find, I like your idea about being accessible, but how do we engage in our male partners and engage in allyship and being able to, encourage our male partners to be more accessible or to be better mentors?
Right, right. Gosh, boy, you always go, gosh, I wish I had the smoking gun recommendation. Well,
Mm.
I'd like to hit on the female aspect first because I, and I don't want to perpetuate a rumor or stereotype on this, but I think, and you've maybe heard this on the podcast, that women aren't necessarily as supportive of other women as we would like them to be. And I don't know if that's statistically valid in any way, but I've certainly heard that over the years. I think it is because women are always pushing very hard to, to really accomplish things and to stand out in a male dominated industry. So from a female mentorship and friendship, I try to take a little extra time to get to know those women who I know are just really driving hard and so busy and so talented, to take those few extra minutes to get to know them personally. And that has just done some unbelievable things for me in terms of flourishing those friendships. I know you've interviewed Dr. Clementich in Atlanta. Boy, what a wonderful woman, and what she did with our superstars of economic development, and had all these amazing women on stage and celebrated them. That's fantastic. In order to, I think, connecting with those male mentors and leaders, just it takes a little bit of intentionality. What I want to see are the ones that have been really great at that, to encourage younger male colleagues to learn from them. So I'll kind of turn it that way, right? So I'll throw out. I think maybe it's a little weird that they're both Barrys, or maybe it's just their generation, but Barry Matherly, also an OUEDI, actually just our immediate past dean, also an IEDC past chair. Barry Matherly has been organically a wonderful mentor to me. He, I think, saw that I really wanted to serve and support IEDC and OUEDI. He said, great, you want to put the energy into this? Let's help put you in a position where you can give back, and let's support you. Barry Broom was the third ever president and CEO for Greater Phoenix Economic Council, was a mentor to me when he was in the region, and he had actually recruited me to Sacramento for a couple years. To this day, in this very moment, I also learned some tremendous lessons from him. And if I'm having struggles or needing somebody with extreme vision, I call Barry, and we can not talk for 6 months. And I could text him tomorrow and say, I have a massive emergency. I need your help. I need you to fly to Albuquerque. He would do it if he could. He would do it if he could in a second. So what I like to do is take my male colleagues, or maybe, men in the profession, that are maybe on my team, or, closely associated. I like to connect them with male leaders in economic development like that, so they can learn from them. I don't know if that's a good tactic or not, but I hope it's working.
I love that. I never thought of it that way. Right? I don't know. It just always seems so hard to bust into the good old boy system.
Right.
Putting it in that perspective, that it's different. It puts a different light on it. So thank you for bringing that to the table. That's good insight. And I hope that I may try. I think I'm going to try
Give it a shot.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some value. Even right, even if you want it to work out a certain way and it doesn't, you're still providing an additional resource for somebody else. So I mean, it helps.
You know what? They're going to learn something. And,
Yes.
and I always love to say too, I have learned things from mentors and leaders, male and female, things that I want to emulate forever, and things that I go, you know what? That's just not my style. I don't identify with that approach, but I've learned more about myself in that. So it doesn't mean that, whatever they were doing, whatever I saw was, wrong. But I do think as you evolve in your career, those are the things you pick up. And so learning things that you wouldn't do are just as valuable in really defining who you are as a professional and as an individual.
Absolutely. Well, last thing we want to talk about is IEDC, right? You are now the new, I want to make sure the title's right, board chair.
I'm vice chair this year.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if I'm successful in this role and I please the board, I am slated to have the opportunity to be chair in 2026. This is an incredible honor. So I certainly don't take lightly the fact that there are so many other economic development professionals that also absolutely deserve to be in this seat. So I always think about it's a mixture of yes, drive, commitment, giving back, engagement, participating. And yes, why not say that there's some luck in there, that you were at the right place at the right time and you had the right opportunity to serve in a role. But it also does take your own personal commitment, because things like this, it is a lot of personal time.
Oh, absolutely. Is there anything that you can share with listeners or members like myself of the IEDC that some any exciting new initiatives or shifts in focus for 2025?
Oh boy, there have been so many over the last few years. And I'd like to preface that with what an unbelievable organization with such a tremendous history and amazing leadership through the course of its history. What I love about IEDC is that, it's continuing to evolve as the profession has evolved, as the world has evolved. The world is not the same place it was pre-COVID. It will never be the same place it was pre-COVID, even in the way we do business and the way we interact. So there is so much that is changing tremendously. It's really amazing to see us evolve. We are thinking so much more now about equity and inclusion and making that an organizational priority, which I think is really fascinating and wonderful. The thing I'd say I'm really thrilled about is that Nathan Oley, our wonderful, wonderful, fearless leader. Well, first, as we were bringing Nathan on, we also really took a big step back and did a large scale strategic plan, thinking about, how the organization would operate and how we would change to meet the current times. And what's funny is I'm bringing out, this is what a geek I am. And I know this is audio only, but I'm showing you, Kaycee, I carry IEDC's priorities and goals for its strategic plan in my moleskin notebook every day with me.
I love that.
And the priorities in our strategy are threefold. It's impact on the individual and the organization, impact on the profession, and impact on the global community. One of the big pieces that we've been doing in really significant stride is creating partnerships. And Nathan has talked about that a lot. He has reached out to statewide economic development organizations and been willing to, and made himself available to talk to them and connect with them. So all of our statewide professional economic development organizations, connecting them with IEDC to a greater extent than we have before, working with other organizations that touch on economic development. So, one of our really tremendous sponsors is the National Association of Realtors. They have come in big with IEDC, and you go, wait a minute, number one, why wasn't that a thing before? And I think, again, it doesn't mean that we were missing something before. It means that the way times have evolved, it's really created a strong case for doing that. So I'm really excited about that. And there's a lot going on in terms of advancing these initiatives. I think one that's just illustrative is, and I heard some people, I want to dispel a rumor. So IEDC has an annual conference every year, and then we have a leadership conference in the first quarter of the year. And historically, or at least for the past, I don't know, decade at least, or at least as long as I've been in the profession, they've kind of moved that leadership conference around to warmer climate places so folks could kind of enjoy that break and go connect with one another as leaders in somewhere kind of fun. We've made a very intentional change. And we are now, at least for the next 2 years, it's a test. We are always, as a board, saying we want to make sure that this works for the profession, for the membership. But we are now holding that in Washington, D.C. this year and next year. The intentionality is there for making IEDC, in my mind, IEDC should be the first go-to and thought of organization when a national media outlet is wondering what economic developers around the country think. What an amazing example. Just this week, when the administration put a pause and then took it away on all federal funding there for grants, I will tell you, I was getting dozens of emails from IEDC and Nathan as a board member every day that was going on this week because they were monitoring it so closely, responding to folks in the profession. We learned a lot. We learned what every single board member on IEDC, what their community relied on in terms of that funding. IEDC has the Economic Recovery Corps going on right now. If that had not been reinstated, we would have had, I believe, 35 professionals that are embedded in communities of need for economic recovery that we would have had to have, that may have been told, sorry, stop your work. So, but IEDC mobilizing on that and being a voice for, here's the impact of that, is tremendously valuable on a national and, of course, on a global scale. And that's why, our impact on the global community is something that has been led with a lot of intentionality as well. So I think there's a really exciting things. And the reason, again, we're holding this in IEDC is, or in Washington, D.C., is now we have economic development leaders gathering to learn from each other and have serious and intentional conversations, and also have the ability while they're in town to then go visit their legislators, go visit their leaders at our nation's capital and carry that conversation forward and be advocates for economic development policy, and also just perpetuating, again, IEDC as a subject matter expert of top professionals in this country and globe on what we need to do to advance our economic growth. And this goes across. The other thing that I love, we talked about my first community, a very rural community. Started in a small, fast growing, but rural community. I represent now regionally rural communities and a metro. IEDC also very intentionally delivers content, coursework, information, and support to rural economic development practitioners, as well as those leading the biggest and, highest budget and most impactful metro economic development groups and statewide groups in the country. We're actually doing our first rural economic development conference in June, and we're going to do it. This is so cool. I think we're doing it in Great Falls, Montana. My husband is losing his mind because he's got immediate family members in Montana. So he can't wait to tag along and then not see me for 4 days. So it's going to be great.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Look, all great information. And I'm so glad you brought up the communication between IEDC board, the members, especially during this transition of leadership at the federal level. This episode will not air until March. So I'm very interested to see what progresses between now and when this episode airs. It's very obvious you take your role with the board very seriously, considering you carry the goals around. I love that. As a strategic planner myself, I just want to, I just give you some claps.
I want Nathan and all my fellow board members to hear that, right? But I do. I've got, Kaycee can attest. I'm holding it up.
You know what you should do is the next time you all meet in person, print those out, laminate them, and hand them to every single person.
Oh, yes.
Give them multiple copies.
Important stuff. Everybody at the conference should have them, right?
That should be on the back of the lanyard.
There we go. Ooh, there we go. Yes. It might be, but I'll have to check. Yeah. It's really exciting. You really do, to me, a mission statement and those key goals and principles are so critical, because that's how you know you're on track. That's how you gut check yourself. And even in a local organization, that's how I deal with scope creep, right? Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't fit with these things, why am I doing it? Because it's going to dilute really what we've agreed upon in terms of how we're going to make impact.
Yep. Look, I think maybe you and I need to have an additional conversation about strategic planning, because it is so critical and important. But it seems just for some organizations, right? Some organizations struggle to, we have it, how do we use it? Or, oh, that's not important. We know where our target audience is, but do you really, right? Are you tracking your KPIs to ensure that that's right? As a strategic planner, that is so critical. And I think we should have another conversation. Yeah. But I want to wrap up for things today. Is there any other takeaways, that you just kind of want to wrap up our conversation with?
Sure. I'd love to add, I'm so proud and grateful of the roles that I've been given the honor to serve in for OUEDI and for IEDC. But I would say, especially women entering the profession now, it took me 20 years. So, it takes time and commitment and really staying in there. So I would definitely encourage anyone that's looking at that and going, how do I get into a leadership role, to just raise your hand. You will, raising your hand by giving back and volunteering or saying, I'd like to sit on that certification committee, or I'd like to be part of that, initiative at IEDC or in my local community. Raise your hand because, I'll say there were times in my career when, you go, oh, I know all the things and I've got so much to offer. There's never been a time when I didn't walk out of that going, wow, I had something to offer, but boy, did I learn a lot. So know that by raising your hand, you're also contributing to your own growth. Those types of things do take a lot of time. And I would love to just throw out, and I don't know all the things. I'm learning every day, and there are things every day, every year that I go, boy, that's changed my perspective. That's changed my approach and how I do this. New Mexico is a very political state. Boy, am I learning about legislative processes in a way I never have before. And it's just it's such an exciting thing to really, really grow. I would offer to anyone, female or male out there, if they're looking, boy, I have this random question, or I don't know who, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to be there for anyone that's just looking for a connection to somebody, a gut check. Hey, am I crazy? Or I need help researching something. Do you know someone? So I just love to always put that out there. Over the years, I have gotten, a few folks that have taken me up on that and some random outreaches, and hopefully I was able to help. So if there's anything like that, or if they happen to be at OUEDI or an IDC conference and they've heard this, I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee or sit down at lunch with you and learn about what you know that I can learn from.
I love that. Thank you for offering that. And thank you so much for your time today, for your insights. This has been a wonderful conversation. So thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Kaycee. And thank you for what you're doing for leading ladies and future leading ladies.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to the Leading Ladies of Economic Development with your host, Kaycee Bunch. Don't forget to like and review this week's episode on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe and share the Leading Ladies of Economic Development podcast with other female ED leaders. Until next time.